Somewhere in northern China right now, roughly 35 million people are waking up in homes that cost almost nothing to construct and nearly nothing to operate. Their walls are compacted earth. No furnace ran last night. No air conditioner cycled through August. Their energy expenditure runs about 77% below the household next door in a modern framed structure. And those modern neighbors believe they have the superior building. They are wrong. They are simply paying more. The wall that makes this possible has existed for close to 10,000 years. Federal laboratory testing confirmed it performs at nearly double the value the official rating system assigns it. That rating system was created by the company whose product it displaced. By the time this is over, you will understand precisely how a wall made from compacted dirt outperforms a wall stuffed with fiberglass, who rewrote the rules to steer you toward the expensive option, and whether you can legally build the cheap one where you live. Begin on the Anatolian Plateau 10,000 years back. The settlement known today as Çatalhöyük held roughly 8,000 people at its height. A functioning city that predates the wheel, archaeological teams from Stanford and Cambridge spent decades excavating its remains and found something that ought to humiliate every modern building standards committee. The walls were thick. Deliberately thick, intentionally thick. Temperature measurements comparing the interior of those structures to the surrounding climate show that while the region outside experienced a daily swing exceeding 40 degrees Fahrenheit between afternoon heat and pre-dawn cold, the interior of those mud-walled homes held within 12 degrees of stability. No insulation board, no vapor barrier, no engineered lumber, no monthly invoice. The wall was doing something that a fully code-compliant modern framehouse cannot match. Move 9,000 years forward to the south of Spain. Construction on the Alhambra complex in Granada began in 1238. Researchers from the University of Granada conducted systematic temperature monitoring inside that structure across multiple full annual cycles. Interior conditions held between 68 and 72 degrees year-round, while outside temperatures ran from hard frost in January to 95 degrees in August. That is 63 degrees of outdoor variation collapsing into 4 degrees of interior variation. No mechanical system, no replacement timeline, no service contract. Purely mass, replace that air conditioning system in 15 years. Nobody has had to touch that Alhambra wall since the Reconquista. The reason both walls work involves a property your insulation contractor has never once mentioned. Every material in a building envelope carries two distinct thermal characteristics. The first is resistance specifically. How stubbornly it slows heat passage per inch per hour. That is what R-value measures. Fiberglass batt runs around R 3.5 per inch. A 12-inch rammed earth wall comes in near 0.6 rand per inch. On resistance alone, fiberglass wins by almost 6 to 1. And the insulation industry is very content to stop the conversation there. The second characteristic is thermal storage capacity, which is the question of how much energy a given material can absorb before its own temperature shifts. Lift a section of fiberglass batt off a pallet, and it barely registers on a scale. An equivalent volume of rammed earth approaches 140 pounds. Heat banking per pound runs roughly similar between the two. But the mass gap is enormous, which means the earth wall accumulates vastly more thermal energy before its interior face moves temperature at all. The consequence of that difference is called thermal lag, and it explains why those Chinese households pay 77% less than their neighbors. When afternoon sun drives the outer face of a 12-inch earth wall toward 110 degrees, the heat does not pass straight through. It enters the wall and migrates inward through dense compacted material, degree by degree. By the time it reaches the interior surface, 8 to 10 hours have elapsed. The energy that was hitting the outside at 2 in the afternoon arrives indoors around midnight, when the exterior has already dropped 30 degrees and warmth is precisely what you need. The wall did not block that heat. It held it until the timing made sense. Extend the wall to 20 inches and the delay grows past 20 hours. Heat penetrating the outer face at midday will not arrive at the living space side until the following morning, by which point overnight cooling has already begun, recharging the wall in reverse. The savage afternoon never arrives inside. The coldest pre-dawn hours never fully register indoors. The wall maintains a stable interior on physics alone, with no electrical input, no moving components, and no monthly bill attached to the process. Fiberglass cannot do this. It slows heat transfer at a fixed rate. Whether you are running through a summer afternoon, wanting the heat excluded, or lying awake on a winter night, wanting the cold blocked, it carries no memory of what the temperature was half a day earlier. It stores nothing and schedules nothing. It is a static material in a world where temperature never stops cycling. Every time it falls short, your furnace or air conditioner covers the gap, and the utility company sends an invoice. Oak Ridge National Laboratory, a Department of Energy facility in Tennessee, tested mass wall construction under conditions that reflect how buildings actually operate, not the static laboratory environment that produces R-value numbers, real daily temperature cycling, real seasons, real thermal loading and unloading. A 12-inch rammed earth wall bearing an R13 rating on paper-delivered energy performance, matching a conventional wall-rated R25 under those real-world conditions. The standard metric was undercounting the wall by nearly half. The Department of Energy released those findings. The International Residential Code has never referenced them in any update proceeding. Australian federal researchers ran a field comparison in 2007 between rammed earth and wood frame construction with identical occupancy. Heating energy dropped 70% in the earth buildings. Daily interior temperature swing inside the earth structures stayed between 4 and 6 degrees, while the wood frame interiors ranged 20 to 25 degrees across the same period. Same outdoor climate. Same number of occupants, one wall that banks energy, one that lets it pass through. In 2018, the International Energy Agency synthesized findings from over 400 studies spanning dozens of climate zones. Mass construction buildings consumed 50 to 70% less energy for heating and cooling on average than insulation-only equivalents. If your combined utility bills run $3,000 per year, the right wall eliminates between $1,500 and $2,000 of that without replacing a single component. The question taking shape right now is why a material with that documented performance record gets classified as non-standard construction in 48 states. That answer begins with a corporate patent from 1938 and ends in a committee room most people never think about. Owens Corning secured its patent for fiberglass insulation in 1938. A company entering a market with a new product does not merely compete against existing solutions. It shapes the standard by which all solutions get evaluated. R-value measures thermal resistance under conditions that do not occur in actual buildings. Constant temperature on both faces, no daily cycling, no seasonal shift, no solar charging and discharging. Under that artificial laboratory setup, fiberglass performs exactly as rated. Under those same conditions, the dynamic energy storage that defines the advantage of mass construction does not register as a measurable quantity. The metric was never designed to detect the property that makes the competing material work. That metric entered the minimum property standards the Federal Housing Administration set during the 1940s. The FHA backed mortgages for the post-war housing expansion, and its standards became the effective national construction benchmark because any home falling short of them could not qualify for FHA mortgage insurance, and without insurance, no conventional buyer could finance a purchase, and without buyers, no builder would build it. A thermal performance standard, shaped around one company's product, became the financial checkpoint for the entire American housing market. Then came 1975. The energy crisis of 1973 created political pressure for national construction energy standards. Engineers with the American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning published Standard 90 that year, the first formal national building energy code in the country's history. It measured thermal performance exclusively through R-value. The drafting committee was drawn overwhelmingly from insulation manufacturers and mechanical equipment producers. No one representing earth and construction held a seat. No rammed earth builder was consulted. The standard buried a theoretical pathway for mass wall compliance deep in an appendix requiring engineering documentation expensive enough to erase the cost advantage before a single brick was laid. In practice, ASHRAE 90 translated to insulation, and insulation translated to fiberglass. The wall that had kept human beings comfortable without utility bills for 10 millennia had no root into any permitted project in the country. The consequences were concrete. Arizona prohibited adobe construction entirely for 2 years because earth walls could not satisfy the R-value compliance framework, a material used without interruption in that landscape since before European contact was declared illegal because it failed a test. Measuring a property that does not explain how the material functions, the metric was not designed to catch that failure. It was designed never to measure the thing that would have produced the opposite finding. This is how market suppression operates in a modern regulatory environment. You do not ban the competition. You write a measurement standard that your product aces and the competing product structurally cannot. You attach that standard to mortgage financing. You seat your industry members on the committee that updates it every 3 years. And then the market reaches the conclusion that the approved product is superior because the code says so, which the code says because your members wrote it. The financial apparatus compounds the code, and the code compounds the financial apparatus. An earth home built outside the approved pathway gets appraised at land value. The structure, the documented thermal performance, the multi-century durability. These carry no recognized dollar value in a conventional assessment. No structural appraisal value means no mortgage basis. No mortgage means cash only. A wall that costs nearly nothing to build becomes available exclusively to people wealthy enough to not need the savings. Insurance reinforces this. Underwriters label earth construction non-standard and apply higher premiums or deny coverage based on limited actuarial data, which is a striking position to take against a material whose performance record extends across centuries. The metric, the code, the mortgage, the insurance. 4 separate systems, each one reinforcing the others, each one making it harder to access the material that outperforms what the code requires. No single meeting where anyone voted to suppress it, just a sequence of standards, each written by parties who profited from the alternative. Each building forward from the assumptions embedded in the previous one, until an entire country committed to a construction approach that guarantees a lifetime of utility payments for something a wall would have delivered without charge. 4 decades of independent research have made that burial increasingly difficult to sustain. The Oak Ridge data landed. The Australian field study landed. The International Energy Agency. Aggregate landed. None of it has been cited in an ICC code update proceeding. What gets cited consistently in those proceedings are submissions from the organizations that fund the ICC's operations and hold votes in the process that produces the rules. David Easton founded Rammed Earthworks in Napa, California in 1978 and spent over 4 decades constructing homes that the code system continues to classify as alternative. His walls are 18 inches of earth driven into pneumatic forms under 2,000 pounds per square inch of compression, running invisible geological strata through the cross-section, banded in burnt sienna and sand, and deep clay red. They look like something the hillside produced rather than something a contractor installed. It is February in Napa. The fog occupies the vineyard rows, cold damp air, the kind that makes 38 degrees feel like 28. Stand at the outer wall of one of these houses and press your knuckles against it. The sound that returns is stone-dense. No hollow cavity resonating behind it. No wood frame flexing in the temperature differential. Step through the door. Something changes before you identify it. Not heated air moving through registers. Something more elemental. The surfaces themselves are giving off warmth. Put your hand against the wall and hold it there. The heat moving into your palm is not coming from ductwork overhead. It is stored energy absorbed during yesterday afternoon's sun, still migrating outward at the exact moment the cold morning outside tries to push inward. The house ran no mechanical heat last night. The energy bill for the entire previous winter came in under $200. The neighbor in a wood frame house of equal square footage paid over $1,800. Now stand at the south face and touch the inner surface of that same wall while the afternoon sun is loading the exterior. The outer surface is being heated right now. You cannot feel it here. That energy will arrive at this interior face sometime around midnight, timed almost precisely to the coldest stretch of the overnight hours. The wall is not blocking solar input. It is scheduling delivery. The silence registers second after the warmth. 18 inches of compacted earth attenuates sound the way it attenuates temperature. The road disappears. The wind disappears. What remains is a stillness your nervous system registers before your conscious mind names it. The quiet of mass. Your heating and cooling bills last year probably fell somewhere between $1,500 and $3,000. This wall class cuts that figure by 60 to 80%. The material exists under your property right now. The only barrier between you and a wall that schedules yesterday's sun into tonight's warmth is a building standard drafted by the organizations that sell what this wall eliminates. That standard is beginning to fracture. In 2021, the International Residential Code adopted Appendix U, establishing the first formal compliance pathway for cob construction, which is the monolithic variant of rammed earth. It passed by a vote of 93-6. Oregon, California, and Washington have adopted it into their state codes. In 2024, the IRC added a pathway for hempcrete. The wall the code spent 50 years treating as unverified is finding its way back into legal legitimacy. One appendix at a time, not because the industry pushing the alternative changed its position, but because builders, researchers, and homeowners read the Oak Ridge data and started asking why the code had never mentioned it. A quarter of all people alive right now live in earthen structures. That is not a fact about poverty or limited access to modern materials. In many of those communities, conventional framing is available, and earth construction is chosen deliberately, because anyone who works through the arithmetic without a manufacturer's budget shaping the conclusion reaches the answer that Çatalhöyük reached 10,000 years ago, and the Alhambra reached in 1238, and Oak Ridge confirmed with instruments in this century. The wall that costs almost nothing to build and almost nothing to run is not the alternative. It is the baseline. Everything the building code requires instead is the detour.